Welcome to on-demand instructions video about analyzing the message of texts. This presentation is based on the Common Core Standards in Literature. We will cover Common Core Literature Standard 5, analyze in detail how an author's ideas or claims are developed and refined by particular sentences, paragraphs, or larger portions of a text. Here we will learn to find the main idea of the entire text or thesis statement. We will also learn how to use tone and the writer's writing techniques to understand the message and intention of the writer. We will be using Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech as an example. As we've learned from our previous discussions, paragraphs, as well as larger texts, contain a main idea which summarize what the writer says about the topic of the text. The tone of the text affects how the reader assimilates the messages. And figures of speech are words or phrases that give emphasis to their meaning by giving a vivid mental image of the idea that they convey. Let's take a look at our sample text for this session. "I Have a Dream" was delivered at the Lincoln Memorial by Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963. During a time of racial oppression, King led a march to the Lincoln Memorial in peaceful protest to the injustices committed against his race. It was meant to convince the public to give equal rights to the African American citizens of the United States. The context of this speech is important in understanding the text. The main idea, or thesis statement, is what the writer wants to say about the text. In the case of a long text, which constitutes multiple paragraphs, it can be derived by getting the main ideas of the sections of the text and condensing these into one idea. In analyzing the main idea of "I Have a Dream," let's begin by finding the main idea of each section of the text. As an example, try to find the main idea in this paragraph. Based on what is shown, the main idea is that 100 years ago, the Emancipation Proclamation brought equality to the Negro slaves. Here are the main ideas of the first three paragraphs of the text. As you can read from the first, second, and third main ideas, you will notice that he talks about the topic. By making a condensed version of the main ideas of each section, you can derive the main idea of the entire text. As we have learned, finding the tone requires us to look into the word choice and point of view of the text. Finding the tone allows us to know what the writer feels about the topic, as well as what he wants the readers to feel. As a speech whose purpose it is to rouse people, the text shows many indications of strong emotion. The overall attitude of the writer is seeming to want the listener to rise to his cause. The tone of the first section, which talks about the situation at hand, is extreme dissatisfaction. The writer then says that the situation must be changed and that he is urgent about it. And finally, the last section is hopeful. Points of emphasis are specific sentences or passages that the writer gives extra importance to by making them stand out in the rest of the text. In this speech, King uses references and allusions to other important texts, figures of speech, repetition of words and phrases, and examples that illustrate his point. He uses metaphors to highlight concepts and influence how we think about them. For instance, the first passage illustrates the discontent of his race in a very vivid way. In the second, he contrasts two ideas by metaphor, effectively making his reader see racial justice in a positive way. Repeated phrases or sentences give emphasis to important points, like when the writer repeats the phrases "go back to," "let freedom ring," and "I have a dream." The text also repeats keywords which are related to the theme. Words like freedom, justice, and saying "we" to involve the audience of the speech are repeated many times. Using concrete examples adds credibility to the text. For example, when the writer talks about the struggles for equality, especially in Mississippi, it involves people who know about the situation in these places. By talking briefly about specific situations, an audience member will be able to relate more to the message of the speech. The writer develops the tone of the text by making variations in his style of writing. Which emotions are being expressed in this paragraph of the text? As you can see from the writer's metaphors and repetition, the tone outrage about discrimination against the African Americans, and the writer is extremely dissatisfied. Other parts develop the tone of urgency and hope when talking about the future. As you notice, the metaphors vividly portray the unfortunate circumstances the African race is in at the time. The repeated phrase, 100 years later, emphasized the lack of equality even after 100 years from the emancipation of the black slaves, their forefathers. To test your text analyzing skills, try doing the following on your own. Identify the main idea of all the sections of I Have a Dream, and use these to derive the main idea. What kind of texts require text analysis? Most of the texts that are analyzed in this way are often essays. These type of texts address a certain topic to the reader and present it in a way which can be analyzed for its effectiveness. Are there other qualities of a text which can be analyzed? Other texts may have an implied meaning which a reader must infer to get a full understanding. In those cases, finding the implied idea and understanding why the writer implied it will be part of the analysis of the text. How do I know when references to other texts are made? References to other texts are often easy to point out. When the writer quotes another text, the change in the quality of the writing, as well as the fact that the writer may have said they are quoting from another text, most readers will understand that the writer is making a reference to other texts. Now that we've come to the end of this lecture, you should be able to find the main idea. You should also be able to understand how the tone is used to convey a message. And you should also be able to identify emphasized points in the text. For further reading, have a look at these resources, as well as the full I Have a Dream speech text. Don't forget to check back at www.ondemandinstruction.com for more instructional videos, podcasts, and materials. We update the site weekly.